Canal Istanbul is a project for an artificial sea-level waterway planned by Turkey in East Thrace, connecting the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara and thus to the Aegean and Mediterranean seas. The Istanbul Canal would bisect the current European side of Istanbul and thus form an island between Asia and Europe. This waterway will have a length of 45 kilometers and a depth of 20.75 meters. Its width will be 360 meters on the surface and 275 meters wide at the bottom. The 45-kilometer-long canal project is described as the biggest rent-seeking exercise in Turkey's history and a recipe for an environmental disaster. But President Erdogan has rubbished these concerns, calling the canal the most eco-friendly project in the world. Surely, no one is rooting for the project more than President Erdogan. But he's not the first to think of this idea. The idea of developing the Istanbul Canal has existed for centuries, dating back to the 1500s. It was first proposed by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman, but the proposal never made progress. Over the next 3 centuries, numerous other sultans attempted to resume the project, but saw no success. Between the 1980s to 1990s, numerous Turkish politicians reintroduced the proposal. However, with not nearly enough shipping traffic, the idea was dismissed. Hence, it is plausible to say that before President Erdogan, many came and went with the same plan, yet the project was always abandoned, mostly for unknown reasons. But finally, in March 2021, the Turkish government approved the canal development plans, enabling the long-awaited construction. However, the question that irked people was, why does Istanbul need a canal when it already has one? The economic capital of Turkey already controls one of the most significant canals in the world, which is the Bosphorus Canal. And not only does it control the infamous Bosphorus Canal, but also the 2 most significant straits, namely the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Strait. These 2 Turkish straits are the only way in and out of the Black Sea, and are crucial trade routes that provide Georgia, Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, and other landlocked countries in Central Europe and Central Asia access to the Mediterranean Sea for trade and passage for military and civilian ships. All in all, whoever controls these 2 straits has access to the Black Sea. Even Alexander the Great and Xerxes knew how strategic these straits were. That's why both of their armies commanded and traversed them, enabling their massive conquests. Hence, Istanbul is one of the most strategically important cities in the world, since the Turkish trade routes of the Bosphorus and Dardanelles are currently among the busiest waterways in the world. To put things in perspective, in 2017, 53,000 ships, including oil tankers, military vessels, and civilian vessels, transited through the Bosphorus Strait. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the number of ships passing each year took a drastic hit, but it is slowly picking up pace. In the year 2023, around 40,000 ships passed through the canal, compared to 14,000 ships passing through the Panama Canal and 19,000 through the Suez Canal. In March 2021, when the Evergreen ship was stuck in the Suez Canal, blocking the passage for 6 days, it was causing damage worth $450 million every single hour to the global economy. Now, imagine what kind of damage it will bring if some accident happens in the Bosphorus, which has 3 times more traffic than the Suez Canal. Furthermore, the most important route to achieving global food security passes across these 2 straits. Several of the world's largest producers of wheat and grains, including Kazakhstan, Russia, and Ukraine, export 1/5 of the world's wheat and 1/6 of its maize, which is traded through Turkey. Throughout the upcoming years in the Black Sea region, wheat and other exports dependence on the Bosphorus is expected to increase dramatically, as it gives a lot of countries a gateway to the Suez Canal, facilitating trade between Asia and Europe, while the Strait of Gibraltar leads into the Atlantic. So these Turkish trades are extremely critical, not just because of the volume of exports, but because there is no other way around. For example, if the Suez Canal disappears completely, there is a way through the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic. But in the case of the Black Sea, the Bosphorus is the only way in and out. But despite the importance of these straits, Turkey itself benefits very little from this possession and has an urgency to build a new canal. The country makes nothing from the Bosphorus Canal, plus they can't even allow certain Allied warships through it. So, how come a country controls the entire canal and still can't have its way around it? Well, after the First World War in 1923, the Turkish War of Independence led the new Turkish Republic to sign the Treaty of Lausanne, which demilitarized the Turkish Straits and opened them up to unrestricted civilian maritime traffic. But by the 1930s, with the rise of fascist Italy and its colonies directly off the Turkish coast, the Mediterranean's geopolitical situation had changed dramatically, and Turkey sought to alter the terms of Lausanne. This led directly to the Montreux Convention of 1936, which enabled Turkey to remilitarize the straits to protect themselves from Italy, and it heavily restricted the ability of non-Black Sea adjacent powers to send any warships through. In addition, it prohibited Turkey from ever collecting or levying any kind of toll or fee, and guaranteed the unrestricted passage of all commercial civilian ships, in both war and peacetime. This was a huge thing for Turkey at the time, since it essentially ensured their neutrality throughout the Second World War, and it was advantageous for the Soviet Union because it would ultimately prohibit any Axis warships from entering the Black Sea for the duration of the conflict. Over the decades since World War II ended, numerous controversies have been raised over the treaty's status. On top of that, the Soviets even demanded joint control with Turkey over the Bosphorus, but Turkey rejected it. However, the Soviets were shrewd. The Montreux Convention stipulated that a maximum of 9 foreign vessels, with a combined tonnage of 15,000 tons, might cross the Bosphorus at any given moment. To make it nearly impossible for any other battleship to pass through, they would simply retain one of their own larger warships inside the Bosphorus at all times. Hence, Turkey knew that they couldn't resist the Soviet Union's pressure alone. So in 1952, they decided to join NATO, which only further provoked the Soviet Union's reaction. The United States was also unhappy with the Bosphorus arrangement because it restricted non-Black Sea nations' warships, including the US, from using the strait. And it's a fact, not hidden, that the United States Navy is almost everywhere. But the achievement won't be completed until the Black Sea is added to the list. Then, in 1994, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, came into force, which largely defines the rights and responsibilities of nations in the world's oceans. Nearly every country in the world has signed on to this agreement, except for Turkey and the United States, as it would surrender nearly the entire Aegean Sea to Greece's territorial waters, while the US largely refuses to sign because it would place the critical Northwest Passage within Canadian territorial waters rather than international waters, thereby ensuring their continued legal status under the outdated terms of the Montreux Convention. Therefore, people can claim or argue that Turkey is building the artificial canal so that the US and NATO could bring aircraft carriers and submarines into the Black Sea to counter Russia, as the convention won't apply to an artificial canal. Of course, the Montreux Convention is not restrictive on artificial canals, but it will still be effective for the Bosphorus and Dardanelles. So, the US Navy aircraft carriers still cannot enter the Black Sea because they still have to pass through the Dardanelles, which they cannot do because of the 15,000 tonnage limitation. Hence, if Turkey's intentions were military-driven, then they would have to build another canal bypassing the Dardanelles as well. It is therefore reasonable to argue that Turkey's goals are not motivated by military considerations. Rather, they are primarily focused on the financial benefits that the canal's banks will yield. That's why the canal will be linked with the new $10 billion airport, which will feature the largest indoor terminal in the world. It will handle 200 million passengers annually and an air cargo hub that Turkey hopes will draw traffic from current European airports, thus generation of more revenue. Nevertheless, whatever the intentions, money or military, not just the people of Turkey, but even outside forces like China and especially Russia aren't happy with the project. China already has ambitions with Serbia and Greece to potentially construct their own canal from the Aegean directly into the Danube River, and they just might get motivated for the same if Turkey charges too much for their canal. Plus, Russia rather enjoys the current status quo in the Black Sea. But if the canal ends up being built, it will probably massively strain relations between Russia and Turkey, and, as a bonus, jeopardize Russia's monopoly of power in the Black Sea near their critical ambitions in Ukraine. The project doesn't only have potential political power struggles, but also many environmental struggles, which is ironic considering President Erdogan argues it is the most eco-friendly project in the world. The Black Sea is less salted and 50 centimeters higher than the Sea of Marmara, so the water would always flow south through the canal rather than north, whereas the water flows in both directions in the Bosphorus. This would result in the upper 25 meters of the Marmara being less salty, and there's a chance that both seas' ecosystems will be impacted. Critics point out that the project will ruin forests, farmland, and a walking trail, perhaps contaminate groundwater with salt and cause further flooding. Other criticisms of the environment include the possibility that the Marmara Sea's salinity would alter and cause Istanbul to smell like hydrogen sulfide. Thus, there are quite a lot of questions, problems, and rejections in the way of the project. But that hasn't stopped the makers of the project from going further. They are prepared with every possible argument and answer in favor of making the canal. Building this channel was primarily justified by the desire to lessen the number of oil tankers passing through the Bosphorus and to lower the risks and hazards related to marine traffic. Additionally, the Bosphorus is one of the busiest straits in the world, while being the narrowest for international traffic. Squeezing through tiny sections of the strait requires large ships to turn at 45 degrees at full speed, which is no simple task. Since the 1950s, more than 450 maritime incidents have occurred here, including some serious ones. One of them even resulted in the deaths of 43 people, and the explosion shattered the glass windows of a quarter of Istanbul's flats. The new canal will have a relatively straight path and handle 160 to 180 ships per day, including tankers with a net carrying capacity of up to 300,000 tons. The government argued that every year tens of thousands of ships carry oil, gas, chemicals, arms, and other hazardous materials, and it will divert those dangerous ships to the new canal. Hence, Turkey will make the most of this new project, which will also be free from the Montreux Convention, as it is not a natural water passage like the Bosphorus. But how would it make the world inclined to use the new canal and pay the fee for it when there's already a free and shorter route? Well, according to the convention, Turkey can't block the passage for anyone, but it has the right to inspect and check the safety standards of merchant and civilian ships crossing the Bosphorus. The average waiting time for a ship to pass through the Bosphorus Strait is 14 hours, and during heavy traffic, it can reach up to 35 hours. However, because Turkey is building a new canal, it will certainly impose restrictions in the name of safety inspections, leading the wait time to exceed 35 hours. Additionally, it is a known fact that the Bosphorus already experiences a lot of traffic, which will further lengthen the waiting times for ships. Consequently, ships will have no choice but to use the new Istanbul Canal. Due to the compounding effect, even a couple of hours saved in transit can result in significant economic benefits in the long run. Hence, if there are profits to be made in the long run, no one would mind paying for the canal. So these are all the reasons why Turkey wants to build a new canal and how it will encourage the world to use it. It will be exciting to see the project come to life that has always been in the thoughts of people but has been abandoned for unknown reasons. And that concludes our story on why Turkey is building the new Istanbul Canal. This mega project not only showcases the remarkable capabilities of human ingenuity, but also foreshadows the transformative effects that will ripple through the landscape, leaving an indelible mark on the future of this land. These explorations into geography and geopolitics take a lot of research, creativity, and effort to bring to light. If you found this journey intriguing, then we'd be grateful if you could show your support with a like and by subscribing to Geomore. Well, that's it from us. Until next time.